Hi friends, we are going to discuss about a popular view in our Indian academic circles and media circles regarding India's case for permanent membership at the UN Security Council or UNSC. Often, the topic itself becomes a controversial one. It is popularly believed that India rejected an offer for a permanent seat at the UNSC way back in 1950s. It is believed that former PM Mr. Nehru willfully rejected such an offer to help accommodate his friend China as a permanent member in the UNSC. And now there are counter claims too. In case Mr. Nehru willfully rejected such an offer, now what is preventing the present dispensation from obtaining a permanent seat using its good friendship with the Western allies, especially the USA? We should also remember that even Russia is still supporting India's case for permanent membership at UNSC. So there are claims and there are counter claims also. Now, let's not go into the political aspect of these claims. Let's discuss and analyze this hypothesis from a technical and legal point of view. Let me briefly explain about the technicalities and legalities as far as membership at UNSC is concerned. You might be aware that there are 5 permanent members at the UN Security Council. These members are UK, US, France, Russia and China, right? So these 5 big guys became the permanent members of UNSC way back in the year 1945. That is at the end of the Second World War. They became the permanent members by virtue of their victory in the Second World War by defeating the Axis powers. So they took the initiative by virtue of their involvement. So they became the 5 permanent members. It should be noted that China was also fighting on part of the allies during the Second World War. They even defeated Japan at the end of the Second World War. So China also became a permanent member at UNSC way back in 1945. This is a very important point. Now, if China already became a permanent member way back in 1945, now where this claim arises, whether India willfully rejected an offer and allowed China to take its place in the UNSC, right? Now, this claim itself becomes unwarranted, right? So, we should remember that China took its permanent seat at the UNSC way back in 1945. Now, the procedure for adding a new member or removing an existing member as a permanent member, the procedure is that the 5 permanent members, they should take the decision. There is a document called UN Charter, which is like a constitution for the United Nations or the UN. Now, this is a document that provides a framework, the rules for the UN. Now, this UN Charter itself has to be amended in case a new permanent member has to be added or a new permanent member has to be removed. Now, in case India or some other country is to be added as a new permanent member in future, the 5 permanent members, US, UK, China, France and Russia, has to give the green signal and amend the UN Charter. So this is the important condition for admission of a new permanent member into the UNSC. In 1945, China already held its seat, but this seat was represented not by the present day PRC, that is the People's Republic of China, but it was represented by the ROC, also called Taiwan. The reason was that Taiwan was largely supported by the Western powers in the 1940s, that is after the Second World War. The Western powers mainly saw Taiwan as the legal representative of China and not mainland China, that is represented by PRC. So they naturally supported Taiwan as the sole legal representative of China at the UNSC. Okay. Later, towards the end of the 1960s, the West slowly started developing its relationship with PRC, that is mainland China. Okay. Nixon, for example, the US leader, he was instrumental in developing close relationship with PRC. At this point in time, in the late 1960s, the Western nations slowly started coming close towards PRC. Now the case of admitting PRC as a permanent member into the UNSC also arose. Now there was a great challenge whether to admit PRC as the sixth member or to replace ROC with PRC. Now this was a great challenge. Now socialist countries like Soviet Union naturally supported PRC's admission into the UNSC. On the other hand, Western nations, especially USA, wanted to have Taiwan as a representative because they had their own interest. They did not want to see a communist country, a huge country, representing as a permanent member in the UNSC. So USA especially was against admission of PRC. Okay. In fact, they even tried to keep two Chinas. They wanted to have ROC, they wanted to have PRC in case they are not able to prevent PRC from becoming a permanent member. So America's stand at that time, their main goal was to keep ROC intact. Okay, so that was their main intent. Okay, so this was the stage during the 1960s and 1970s. But ultimately in the 1970, US administration itself wanted to go close with China. So they themselves relented and allowed PRC to replace ROC as a permanent member in the UNSC. So this was the reality, this was the actual situation. Okay. Now you may wonder how ROC was removed. I already told that in order to remove a permanent member, the permanent members have to change the UN Charter. Okay. So it means that the permanent members, all permanent members will have to agree. Now, for removal of ROC itself, that is Taiwan itself, should have given the green signal to remove itself as a permanent member from UNSC. Now naturally, this country would not have done that. Now this is also a big issue that has to be resolved, right? Now this issue was resolved in a very unique manner. This issue did not come up as a question as a removal of ROC and admission of PRC. The issue was raised as a question of legitimacy between ROC and PRC. So the question was not replacing one permanent member with another member. It was a question of recognition whether ROC represented China or PRC represented China. Okay. So this question itself was completely altogether different. Now this was decided not by the 5 permanent members. This was decided by the entirety of the General Assembly members. Okay. Now the General Assembly members, through voting by a 2/3 majority, they chose to recognize PRC as a representative of China and they removed ROC as a representative of China from the permanent membership of UNSC. So simply remember, the question was about legitimacy and not about actually replacement of a permanent member with another permanent member. Okay. So in 1971, the UN General Assembly decided that PRC should be the actual representative of China at the UN. So naturally, even in the Security Council permanent seat, automatically PRC replaced ROC. Now this is how PRC replaced ROC way back in 1971. Now let's come back to this claim that Indian state rejected the offer. Now like I said, starting from 1975 till 1970s, this was the peak of the Cold War. Okay, the Western powers headed by USA wanted to have a country that would suit their interests in the UNSC. So naturally they favored ROC over PRC. Okay. Now when it comes to India's case, India received 2 offers, one in 1950 and the other in 1955. In 1950, India got an offer from US and in 1955 they got an offer from Soviet Union. It is often told that Nehru willfully rejected these offers. Nehru himself has clarified in the parliament that he did not receive any official offer. Okay, at the most, these are deemed to be feelers from the great powers. Okay, so feelers in the sense they were checking India's intent to join the UNSC, but the underlying interest was to push India or pull India toward their power blocks. So USA and Soviet Union were largely trying to influence India under their blocks. Okay, so ultimately these were not substantial offers. These were largely feelers. That is why India did not accept this offer. In the first place, these were not offers. Definitely, the Indian state would have accepted such an offer in case it was tangible. But such a tangible offer never came. It should be noted that in 1955, Soviet Union was told to come up with an offer. In case it had come up with a substantial offer, in 1955 it was in a stage to convince its friend China to amend the UN Charter and allow India as a sixth member. It would have done so in 1955, but it did not do so. In case Soviet Union came up with such an offer, definitely India would have said yes, but it did not come up with such a tangible offer. Okay, so these are all important questions that need to be answered with respect to India's rejection of a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. Now let's come to the present stage. Now, US, Russia, France and UK, 4 permanent members are supporting India's bid for permanent membership at UNSC. Only China is a roadblock for India. It is preventing India's permanent membership because, like I said, UN Charter has to be amended in order to admit a new member. Now, the situation is not much different from the situation in 1950s, right? Yes or no? 1970s, US came close with PRC. Even now, they are close with PRC on many aspects, economic aspects, for example. Okay, only on the outside they will, showcase as if though they are mortal enemies. But even between China and US, there are good relations, especially in the economic sphere. Okay, US is still reluctant to intervene substantially in the internal affairs of PRC. Now this is the situation. Now this situation is not much different from 1950s, right? Some 6 years ago, even till that period, we have good relationship with Russia. Only now we have strategically aligned with USA. For that matter, before 2014, Russia could have convinced China. Even now, these two states have many ideological similarities. They are allies in many proxy wars around the world. So even before 2014, Russia could have convinced China to offer India a permanent seat in the UNSC, but Russia did not do so. So what do you understand from this? So all these developments clearly show that the P5 members were not wholeheartedly ready to offer a permanent seat for India at the UNSC at any point in time. This is the reality. You can search any archives. You can check the statement given by ministers, the former PM Mr. Nehru in the parliament. You can check for yourself. So clearly it shows that the P5 members did not do anything substantially to allow India to take a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. Definitely, they do not see India as an equal partner. This is unfortunate truth. Even before Second World War, USA sympathized with India for its independence, but it did not help India directly. Right? So we Indians, we have to be united. We have to develop our country economically. We have to strengthen our military. We have to develop our security arsenal. We have to build missiles. We have to do our indigenous research. We have to develop our advanced fighter jets and so on. We have to showcase to the world that we are an emerging superpower, both economically and militarily. Only then countries will start respecting us, right? We cannot go and expect a UN Security Council seat as a matter of favor, okay? We have our right to demand a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. We have our merits, definitely. We have worked for the rest of the world. We have raised important issues even during the Cold War era. We have contributed financially, militarily for other countries. We are important contributor economically, socially for the least developed countries. We definitely have a case for permanent membership at UN. So the right way forward is to use diplomacy, is to renew the good friendship with Russia and apply pressure on China to allow India as a sixth permanent member of UN, because like I said, the UN Charter warrants an amendment to let a new permanent member enter the UNSC. So this has to be approached only through rational lines, through indigenous development and showcasing that India has arrived as a major power on the international stage. Thank you.